Hey, everybody. Welcome back. This is Lynette Trares from I'm Every Woman Think Tank podcast. I am here today with what's probably going to be my favorite guest so far, Gabby Valentino. And what a name. I got to ask you about that here. I'm like,
it's a story.
How the heck do you get the name Valentino?
Right.
So we're in the house here in Clayton. We're in a studio. We're taping and we're also live. But I want to start off with Gabby. I know you got some books over here. I'm like,
I do got some books.
You got everything. But let's start off with Gabby. Gabby, Tell me your story. I want to know what is your last name? Because it's like a show name.
Well, you know how some celebrities take on poets and everything, take on other names. Like Jamie Foxx had to change his name to really capture. So Gabby Valentino is not like my born name.
It's not? Okay.
It's not my government name. And I think it kind of works out because of social media. I'm an educator and, you know, like I could be a comedian. I'm passionate, so my conversations, you know, can sometimes, you know, be maybe possibly inappropriate. So I just keep it under Gabby Valentino. But it is not my birth name. But my birth name is Gabriel, so I'm named after an angel.
I love the name Gabby, though. I love the name
but Gabby Valentino, my one of my good friends, she came up with Gabby Valentino back in the day, and it we just stuck with it, and I just, you know, ran with it.
Well, when I found her, actually, everybody, I was looking up some things about Monsanto, because a lot of people know I'm just really I'm a cancer advocate for cure all cancers. I have a nonprofit. Everybody knows about that. But I was just researching Monsanto, and she had popped up on my search, and I started watching a video that you had posted. And actually, I think it was last November that you posted it and tagged her, and it. I guess the story goes from there.
Right.
But I don't necessarily want to go totally into that, I guess, but you can if you want to. I don't want to take you places that you don't want to go.
Right.
But I feel like we were supposed to connect. And when I did reach out to her after listening to her post on what was going on in East St. Louis, I'm a native of St. Louis. I've left, come back. I felt kind of connected with you, too, because I know you got out of here.
Yeah.
We didn't grow up in the same kind of socioeconomics, but I got what she was talking about because, like I said, I'm from St. Louis originally. My parents are from the South. I came from a very impoverished background. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, I've been to, like, the Appalachians of Arkansas, you know, and I would have to go back and watch people live in socioeconomic situations where there were holes in the floor, you know, next to their bed at night, looking down to the dirt. I had to use an outhouse with my grandparents until 1972 because they did not have indoor plumbing.
Wow.
So, for a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm always just really compassionate about every part of the world, and we all kind of just land here. You know, like you said, you were named after an angel. Right. I mean, we're born of this world, and we just kind of land where we land when we come into it. Where we take ourselves on our journeys, another story. Right. But I felt your passion about coming home. You were talking to your dad. I have a really strong relationship with my father, too. Mm-hmm. I can talk to him just pretty much anytime, any place about anything. Right, and he is a street kid at 15, out on the street, no home, and had to fend for himself. So I really was just curious about you, too. So I really just have waited to give her the mic because there's stuff I want to ask you, but I know you're compassionate enough and you're charismatic enough to kind of tell it yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and let you get started, and then I want to ask you about that book. Okay.
First off, most definitely got to appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
I think everything happens in divine order, and so I think it had to be destined. But yeah, I'm from East St. Louis, Illinois, and you say that, and everybody like, oh, I know where St. Louis is at. It's like, no, it's across the water. It's the Mississippi.
Yeah, we talk about that. We go across the river.
Across the river, and you know, like they tell people, some people get warned not to go over to East St. Louis. You know,
exactly.
But you know, being born and raised there, you know, is unavoidable for me. And even though it's a place. It's like it's a bittersweet place, you know. Like I left in '92, and it was survival mode. You know what I'm saying? Like I need to get out of here because, and that's, you know, my self-talk, because I figured that I would be either, you know, baby mama, like have a lot of kids, or, you know, end up maybe addicted or most definitely abusing alcohol or something like that. I just didn't see any life for me that could jumpstart my life, because parents always talk about, I tell this to my students because I am an educator, like, at the end of the day, your parents are going to talk to you about college or whatever. But at the, when you graduate, you're going to find that they have nothing for you for college, to go to college. So they haven't planned for you. It's just things that are talked about. And
Same thing. I didn't even get talked about. I just wanted to go, and I didn't have a way.
And you don't have a way. And so I think the military is a good jump start, to with young adults and teenagers. Like, if you want to just jump start your life, most definitely. Like, I don't want to say most definitely join, because I get why people, especially maybe even Black Americans, they say that, that's not a place for Black people. But at the end of the day, it's just like a job, and at the end of the day, we as Black people need to focus on improving our lives and changing the trajectory of our generations. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm a mini first in my family, and so that just makes me keep grinding or doing, taking risk or doing whatever. Because my sister be like, don't you just be doing too much, and this, that, and the other. I'm about my 10th year and just not working a traditional job, and that's been interesting, an interesting role. But yeah, so East St. Louis, it has my heart. And I love it so, yet I'm disgusted with it at the same time, And so it's a bittersweet.
I'm disgusted with St. Louis City. I mean, you were there. Yeah. I didn't grow up in the city, but we came from what was still I felt like part of the city when my parents moved west.
Right.
Lucky for me, they did move in some ways. And lucky for me, I wasn't born in another state. Right. Where they came from. But here, keep going.
Yeah. So, yeah, most definitely. So I started coming back to East St. Louis. Like, I spent 10 years in the military. And every time I would come home, which I always, it would just seem like less and less houses were on the street, occupied, and then once they not occupied, unfortunately, in the city of East St. Louis, they don't know how to maintain and sustain good environments, a good, living space or, for people. And so it's a lot of abandonment. So I always thought that I could own a street. Like, I always said, like, if I ever moved back to the city, that I wanted to be a mayor. I had to be the mayor, because I think, like, being in a place like East St. Louis, you got to have some type of power or position. And I think it's been abused quite a bit. And so what made me start really, I visited often anyway, because that's where my family is at. Right. I live in California. That's my primary residence. But I ended up purchasing, like, my first house in Washington Park, like 2016. And then on that street, I secured like 3 other houses. And so now that project in my learning phase is called Project 51st Street, because it's on 51st in Washington Park. And it just so happened to be like, all this stuff is trending, but I've kind of like I've been there. It's like you have all these things. Right. Like you say, this podcast kind of just happened, but you had already been putting work in and doing this, and like how you saw me, they saw you, you know what I'm saying? Or whoever, or the universe, or whatever made things happen. And so that's pretty much how life is for me, and how I, go after dreams and things like that. It's like I've realized that there is power in the mind. I realize that we can manifest things that we focus on, that we work towards. And so that's what led me to Project 51st Street, having 4 houses. Now, I'm at the ground level, it's all my own money going into this project. So it's taken a long time.
We got to get you some money. Get you somebody that gets up and lift it up.
Right, yeah, because it most definitely, and my dad's aunt stays on that street, so she's been on the street for like 40 years, and really it's probably like maybe 5 livable, 5 or 6, but yet it's a row of houses. And so even with that, it's like, I even want her, because she's 80-something now, to step out on her street and feel comfortable or whatever, could sit out on the porch and see beauty, not look at abandonment and trash and, comes that you have squatters, you have all sorts of things. So it just really, I think that was divinity that it happened to be that street that she's on. The alderman is on the end of it. And so he tries to do his best. And so, yeah, that's pretty much like where I'm at with, and why the frequency of traveling home. So like on winter break, summertime, I come out here, try to kick off a few projects. Like last summer, I kicked off Come East St. Louis, which is a community open mic experience, because I produce comedy shows. I can step on stage every now and then and crack a joke or whatever. So I'm just always working off of what I have right now, you know what I'm saying? And I think I don't have the funds because I haven't set out the time, space in my mind and energy to go after it, because I think it's most definitely something that they are funding all over. And so it's just a matter of the right people seeing me at the right time, of me just, I don't know, changing overnight or something, whatever.
Well, the collaborators, the people will see what they see, and I think see what I saw. I mean, who was I?
Right.
You're probably thinking, what the freak is this chick contacting me about? But I'm like, I saw something, and I saw something much bigger than the topic of the conversation, which was obviously of interest to me too.
Right.
I'm not of that part of the community or the area, but I know the need, and I always have this thing about find the need and fill it, or if there's fill it. So people come together from all over the place. That's why I call this a think tank too.
Right. Yeah.
The think tank part of it to me is, and I've known about think tanks for many, many years, for 20-something years or more. But that's a global community from people from all over the world. You just really, really never know. Social media is a really impactful, powerful place right now.
Right.
Podcasting is a very powerful place.
Right.
This podcast, I mean, the time in the studio, I'm looking for sponsors, because I feel like I've got a lot of great stories that are coming toward me, people that I connect with in my lifetime, that, I pay for the studio out of my pocket.
Right.
This is not sponsored, at least as of yet.
Right.
But I've got to quit saying But with that said, she's got me. You've inspired me even to keep doing what I'm doing.
Most
even
definitely,
more, because women of all places, races, backgrounds, socioeconomics, educational places. I mean, I do want to talk to you about that too, because my mind is unfortunately, I mean, all I see or try to see, and we don't live in a perfect world, but I really just want to close my eyes and connect with my mind. We talk, we communicate, but I don't see anything else when I'm talking to somebody.
Right.
And so, but it's still, the fact of the matter is, it is what it is. You're from East St. Louis. You're from the East Side. We call it East Side or East St. Louis. There's a lot of great things that have come out of East St. Louis. So you've got Jackie Jorney Kersey. I mean, she's here. I mean, you've got a lot of, I'm like thinking, gosh, who else is from the city? Let's give it some positive.
Yeah, a lot of blues, jazz musicians, most definitely. Right. They got the Miles Davis house out there, it's East St. Louis has a lot of history that I'm even still learning about, a lot of treasures, things like that. And it's like we just quickly hit gentrification, because I live in the Bay, so I'm seeing it.
Right.
So like what I want the people of East St. Louis to realize is that, when they talked about reparations, I think we should get reparations, most definitely to Black people. But, until then, it's like, especially cities like East St. Louis, like you have your 40 acres in the mill. It is ran by your people, for your people. And so we got to be intentional on our outcomes that we want, just like, Martin Luther King saying, nobody going to come over here and save us. You know what I'm saying? So we got to save us. And so recognizing that is like gentrification happens because the opportunity is there. Is it fair for people to be displaced and outpriced like tremendously, like people that was paying $800 rent in Oakland are pushed out, and now literally the same apartment, not upgraded or anything, is now $2,000. Like that's totally unfair. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, when you're within a place, it's hard for you to see things. Like even for ourselves, it's hard for us to find our own faults. But if we're on the outside looking in, we could look at everybody else's faults. So Black people, we got to treasure our own cities. East St. Louis is trash. Just reading the article, you're 19 times more. You're 19 times more to get murdered in East St. Louis than any other city. Any other city in the United States of America. And they did a real long study, and I read through them, I'm like, wow. So this is our peoples in our own city killing our peoples, and so we really got to change, do some paradigm shifting, do some operate in emotional intelligence instead of just reaction. But we gotta, our 40 acres in a mule, we got it right now. We can turn our city around. You can, East St. Louis, at first I was gonna think about trying to sell the houses, but they don't value home ownership.
No.
And they've accepted such low quality of landlordship. Landlordship is not a word, but you can put ship on it. And no word to make it work.
You can.
Right, they just live in such low standards, and I think it's kind of like a slave mentality. It thinks, and then it's like hopelessness or whatever, but the quality of living. So that's what I really want to provide, in my, with Project 51st Street, maintaining, I value the person that is living there, and I want them to value that street, so that my goal is really securing the block so I can have quote unquote control, so you can control the streets. So I'm like, do I want senior row or veterans row? But most definitely want to kind of build a community. But yeah, with our people, and I say our people, I'm talking about Black people, we just have to really do much better. I think the adults overall, universally, nationally, as adults, we really gotta step it up and be better examples for the next generation. Because when I'm in the classroom, they not happy about what's going on in the world. And they got all the brightest ideas. And do
you think that's all race, or do you think I can tell you my kids coming out of Gen Z kids, I've got a high school graduate this month, and I had them actually on another episode about school safety, but they're feeling hopeless, I think, all across the board. Yeah. They don't feel like their zest for getting out there in this world and the times we're in, there's a hopelessness of what their future is. And I don't know that that's necessarily, it just feels like there's opportunities. I don't feel like the opportunities are there. Right. Not everybody's college material.
Right.
The trades are back. There's a lot going on with that. You're an educator, but education comes in all shapes, sizes, and in different things. I think I was listening to you talk about your block and East St. Louis. Wouldn't it be a beautiful thing if St. Louis is falling in the cracks too over here, that if you were, able to come together with an organization and do some sustainable type of living, like they've got a container home that we have a local artist here in St. Louis that built a container home in St. Charles. Okay. His name is Zach Smithy. You've been away. Get familiar with it. He just helped engineer and design and build another container home down on the north side, down across from Crown Candy. Yeah. And that says to me, hey, there was probably a vacant house that they basically demoed. I don't know the whole story. There's a tour here coming up in the next couple of weeks. But they probably took that spot, that land is probably pretty much given to them because there is an organization now giving away houses for $1. But if you got to put 3 years, into it before you can do anything, you get to show occupancy and whatever and fix it up within 3 years. But if you do something like that, even for the places that are vacant lots, if you were to bring in like an organization or sustainable design team that wanted to invest back, and you built a community up in East St. Louis, what a model that would be for the other side of the river for St. Louis. Yeah, and so that's like a larger scope. That's like my dream, and then it's like outside of that, they had a hard time retaining businesses. There's no job opportunities in East St. Louis. And it was slim when I was in high school. It's like you can't work in the city. And the city offers you, liquor stores or things like that. And so they just have new leadership. I think just speaking on new leadership in East St. Louis, I think they have to stop voting their friends in. I think they need to do research. The thing about East St. Louis, they just really haven't had a high quality team running the city. Like with project management, I got a master's in project management. You got to have the right people in place. And I think
based on the lack of education, the lack of resources, because they're coming from the city. So they don't have those networks and they don't have that know-how. You need to get you a very, very, very smart person, technology keen, grant writing keen. Stop hiring friends, stop hiring felons, stop hiring convicts, stop hiring people that do inappropriate things, you know what I'm saying, and putting them in leadership, you know, and that's across the board. That's even with Donald Trump. It's not a white or black thing. It's just, I just saw when he was running, I'm not even tuned into politics. It's like, when you incite that much hate, you know, as human beings, I think ultimately are followers. It takes a lot to be a leader. You know, if it was easy to be a leader, everybody would be a leader. So, like in my classroom, like one person would do something, and then now I got 10 more people. And so my students like, oh, Miss Rocket, no, I'm gonna hold all 10 of you accountable, because let me tell you, you at some point in life, you're gonna have to decide who's the right person to follow. And I'd rather for you to start in the 5th grade, because once you get 18, it ain't too many apologies that you're gonna make. It's these humans are just, I mean, we're magnificent beings, but we polar opposites too. There's really great humans out there, and there's not so great humans out there. And
I agree with that one.
Yeah, so stuff is not necessarily race-based. It's more so of conditions that, like, we're brought up in. And so, like you saying, your kids are experiencing this, and I'm sure they're in a better school system than the kids out in East St. Louis. Just off top, you know, period.
Yeah, that's a given.
But they're feeling this, you know what I'm saying? And they're feeling this because they seeing worldly things. Exactly. They're affected. As kids, my you know, one student, you know, he was in my classroom, he was doing, he just wasn't doing work, and then an accident called to the board, he all sensitive. Then he decided not to, you know, he didn't want to come. And those students I check in with, because one, I just say, we got to get over this shyness. You're learning with doing mistakes. But they're like, what is the problem? What was such difficulty? And he just was like, you know, he was a black kid, 5th grade. He was like, I just get sad, you know, my dad, I've never really met him. Then, you know, and they in the classroom with grown-up problems on their mind. I'm trying to teach, you know, adding and subtracting fractions. They don't have that space. And, you know, that's why I had to say earlier, as adults, we really need to take a look at ourselves right now, how we're showing up in the world, because we're not going to live forever. And we have a next generation that's coming behind, you know, us. And so we got to do a better job. And I think, like, platforms like this, the guy who's pushing emotional intelligence, DBF, for people like me, you know, are standing in, it has nothing to do with race, or standing, or being those model people for the next generation. Get it. You know, I think, like, with hopelessness, the next generation is so far-fetched. It's hard to, you know, like, have a moral code. It's hard to, you know, stand your ground, you know, and that's difficulty with, now when we talk about race, that's the difficulty with, you know, black races and poverty and things like that. So, yeah. I don't know what I was talking about, but hopefully we went around.
You got it. Yeah, I got it. No, I got it. But I'm also listening. I mean, you think it changes the mindset, too, when you leave a place that is not as progressive as everyone thinks it is. Sometimes they think that, you know, St. Louis is what it is because they're the people here that think that.
Right.
Those who are not here or have left and come back, we don't think like you anymore. We've changed our whole game.
Yes.
And we come back at a different, I move really fast.
Right.
I've not lived a fast life, but I have done some things that have taken me places that when I come back, I'm like, wow, they're still doing that?
Right.
Or why is it still like that?
Right.
Or why can't these people get their government right?
Right.
Why can't they clean these cities up?
Right. Like,
and why? You know, it's you took it upon yourself, and I agree with you with the military. I actually, my kids are dependents of the military. I'm an ex-military wife, Army, you're Navy.
Hey, shout out to the veterans.
All of them. Even though I wasn't in the military, I shared with you real quick last night, I almost tried to join back in 1999. I wanted to go in. And actually, I wanted to come in as a JAG officer. But anyway, all that said, still the same. It was a change of lifestyle for us to go in. And it was a late life entry, but it was also to get education and to get some opportunities to change our life.
Right.
And to get out here. And you took advantage of that. And I think for some people, I mean, money's tight in this economy still. I don't think this economy has caught up with itself like people think that it has since the downturn. And I'm not one of those people that would propose that people become, student loan poor like myself.
Right.
Because I'm so poor with student loans that I don't own a home because I can own a home with as much as I own in education. Right. Lucky for yourself, you got the GI Bill.
And I was most definitely lucky for that.
Right.
Because I don't know if my credit would have got to the point what is really required,
Right.
And that's another piece that's missing in the education. Financial education should be more important than probably even history, because our history has been tainted
and that's what kids are talking about. The kids today, or at least mine, are talking about, why are we taking all? I mean, history's important.
Yeah.
But so we can read that online, or we can watch this on a Netflix or a YouTube video. We can do this or we can do that. They go, we want to know how, and they say that. They go, we want to know how to set up, our bank accounts, or what do we need to do in order to finance, ourselves, or get ourselves in a home, or to do the things that are basic life skills.
Right.
They're teaching them what they call a fact class, where, you're sewing an apron, or you're learning how to bake brownie. We already know how to do that.
Yeah, they can find out how to bake a brownie.
And they're not wearing aprons anymore, most people. So that's been from the 1950s. So, yeah. Back on with that, I want to bring you back around to the Monsanto issues, how we met, which you were very passionate about. So let's speak on that, because I've had some things that I've watched. I've talked about landfills and things around the area, and that's a heated topic for us both. There's a lot of people that I come from a farmer's background. My family were sharecroppers, and when I look at I know what an heirloom seed is.
Right.
When you hear people talk about, my generation of kids, even though I had them late, the statistics are showing that their lifespan is not going to meet the lifespan of ourselves because of the foods that they eat. The foods that they're eating are GMOs and things like that are coming from places that is no longer Monsanto, Bayer.
Right.
And I've got people running around town here going to social events and fashion shows, and if they really looked at the back behind it, it's not a United Way, backed, funded. If you can look on their website, they're not putting on the fashion show. Monsanto is. I just don't support it. So
I believe, they say all money ain't good money. That's an idiom out there, and that's the truth. And so the passion behind Monsanto came from two areas. One, I'm from the city, so we've been driving through Cahokia, seeing that Monsanto plant that it's in such close proximity that you already know it's doing damage. Then they had Zero on the side of it back in the day. And the reason why I'm mentioning Zero, I'm gonna come full circle about Monsanto. The reason why they should be paying long-term medical, it should have some type of medical not even service or whatever. It probably need to be unlimited or have a certain time span. And I say that because my granddad became an amputee because of working in the plants. Zero and Monsanto right next door to each other. And so, one spill or whatever, one on his leg or sore on his leg, okay, that leg got to get taken out, then that leg got. So my grandma, took care of my granddad for the whole time, and they got a little check. I'm sure they didn't get much, and I'm sure she didn't get much when he passed, but because that's, that's why they kept us from being educated. They didn't want black people to be educated, or anybody really, the top 1% really don't want anybody to be educated, because when you don't have education, you don't have any know-how to make decisions. So you just make blank decisions. And so sign paperwork, they give people easy with paperwork. And so I think that's what happened with Monsanto or whoever was representing them. So my dad, even working on the project, he's been trying to be very supportive. So he has been helping me with the little monies or whatever. And he was set on it. Everybody was talking about, it's like the tax money. And when I get this taxes, so it was like that with Monsanto. And people were really thinking that they were going to get paid out. Now, what they did with their money, whatever. But had they been affected, I think everybody can qualify for that. Because I live in Richmond. Chevron is a couple of miles away. The city of Richmond, whoever manages, Chevron is putting in money to that city. They have the Richmond Promise, which they copied off another state, which scholarships to kids, enrichment to scholarships, and they got like $900,000 for that. So, you know, and that's why I talk about leadership and who they have managing the city managers, the mayor. Like if we had those type of people with that type of knowledge and could walk into different places and make deals, because this is all about negotiations and running a business, then they could have a little bit more resources or a better representation for people that is for them. So whoever represented the people in East St. Louis, they just cut out a lot of deals, and by the time people got checks and waited years and months, they was trying to take like student loan money from the checks. Like that has nothing to do with anything. These people are dying from all kind of diseases, you know, out there, whatever. So you have tainted this whole, not just city of East St. Louis, obviously Cahokia, South J, right. You know, all those neighboring cities. And they got checks like $100, $200. And so my dad, I could tell that he was heartbroken. I don't know if you saw my dad in there.
I did.
Because he was heartbroken. He was bringing up, you know, leaders from back in the day and how they showed up. So they, you know, the older generation don't even have any fight anymore.
No,
and
I agree with you on that.
They don't have the education, so they can easily be duped, you know, signing paperwork. And so these people sign this paperwork, and then they just ended up with 100, 200. This is just a lot of disappointed people, you know, and a lot of hurtful. And it's just like, you know, I think Black people deal with trauma after trauma. That's even though that's not physical, it's traumatic, because that's why they feel like ain't no sense of me getting my hopes up high, ain't no sense of me fighting, ain't no sense of me voting, you know, because they're gonna find a way. And so it's hard to crack that or make them think differently when the outcome is typically always that.
The same, right.
And so, as you know, I think that was like one of my largest views are live when I did that Monsanto. I think like right now I probably have 1,200 views. And I did a live show when they did Give Us This Day. I don't know if you saw that documentary.
I did not.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. And so, but you know about 89 Blocks. When LeBron James produced and came and did the documentary. He did that like last year, 2 years. So like East St. Louis got the spotlight on them, and they do get money, so they just don't have the right people in place. And so, yeah, my dad was really hurt, and it's like now they was telling people, there's somebody out there, I can't think of her name right now, that is fighting or trying to educate people. But it's like, I'm disappointed in my people because I guess it's just so hopeless that they don't have the motives. They haven't identified a motive to be different. Like they just have gotten so used to it. And so even though she was fighting and people were supposed to show up, and this lady started picketing and all of that, and you know, telling people not to cash their checks. You know, and a poor person, this $100 is looking like $1 million for them.
Yeah, it might be groceries this
week. Your kids this, you know. And so that was a challenge for them. And that's sadly what Black people always have to succumb to, accepting less than, you know what I'm saying? And so that right there sometimes angers me. And I don't even know who to be angry at. Sometimes I'm angry at my peoples. Sometimes I'm angry at the world. Sometimes I'm angry with the white people, you know, and I just have to say, okay, it is what it is, or something like that. But
I think there's power in numbers, though, Gabby, because I feel like that sometimes when I have an idea or something I want to get back behind, I know the need is there because I've had people reach out to me, you know, but it's like you're only one person,
right? You
know, and even though you're a powerful individual in that way, the way you're coming out about it, you still have to have an entourage, you know, and then the selection, like you said, the right people, not people that are crooked, that are, you know, when the monies are paid out, that they're taking the money and putting it in their pocket, and the same stuff just, you know, gets swept back under the rug, you know, and then, you know, 20-something years later, you come back to the same neighborhood. I mean,
like even worse conditions, like I left in 92. I mean, they had Clark, they had Hughes Queen, they had all these middle schools. They had houses on blocks. It's whole streets that are just like all the houses that I lived in, like they just abandoned streets, one or two. Like this is like, I'm thinking like our generation would have done something differently, you know, showed up differently. But, you know, it's like even politics, you know, they talk about the crab in a barrel. it's just hard to explain, but I don't know, like, how did in 20 years, the city has taken a nosedive. And so
it's a nosedive on the other side too.
Yeah, it is,
and it is politics. I really, really think it's politics. Because I had a guest before you, and she's vested in her community, and been there 20-something years, and served as St. Louis City police officer. But I didn't put that on the show. But she's planning to move to Atlanta.
Right.
Hello, Atlanta. Remember when Atlanta was not so great a place back in the 90s?
Right.
People move to certain places and invest there, but it's again about numbers.
Right.
I mean, it's just there.
It is about numbers because like that's what it is with even my project. Even like with family, they appraise you, are you doing good or whatever, but they not going to get behind you. They not going to put no money, and they going to even sometimes try to talk you out of it because they don't see no value. It's too much work. It actually is like. When you're doing things your own self, I think one thing, like when I'm following or listen to any person that has made it, they talk about like just staying consistent. I think about like Nipsey Hussle, rest in peace. This was this,
last week,
artist, but just following him and all his interviews and things like that, and this guy was independent from the ground up, and so that's why I think he's had made such magnitude and impacted so many people. And then when you listen to his lyrics, it's they're pretty solid. But, everybody just talk about consistency. And I think that's been like, even with my success and like comedy shows or this, that, and the other, it's hard to do your own thing and keep that stamina. And, and you get discouraged because you're trying to encourage people. They know you're trying to encourage, but they don't, support you. Yeah, so.
Well, you said the word lyrics. I'd like to ask you, did you bring, I know you just kind of shoot it from the from the head, but what are you were doing something, I was watching you stand up open mic.
Yeah, from the hood of the ghettos. That's it kind of is like a snapshot about my life in East St. Louis, and I free write. So I don't necessarily that's the only poem that I kind of know, but it's like one that I am growing into and understanding even more so. And it's because I could easily write. I was thinking about I needed a pen, paper, so I could write something before. And by the time I leave, I could spit it out. So I'm straight.
Why don't we do this to close out? Because I've got to close. Let's close with it.
Okay.
And tell me about that book real quick, because I don't want to miss that one.
Okay, this book, Motivating Our Youth. This is my first published poems. I have 3 poems in this book. It's a lady by Luella Dudley. She has a sister in ink, and she does the anthologies. And so I have a second anthology coming up. But this particular book, what's exciting about it, she was another person similar to you, and she praised me all the time. And sometimes I'm like, is it real? But she feels this way. So submitted 3 poems. I actually was the winner. I didn't know if she was grading anybody, but you can see congratulations, Gabby Valentino. For my 3 submissions, I was the top one. I actually won $100. That's kind of like my theme. So I have 3 poems in here. And this is in the youth voice, or is it, I'm either talking to them or
where can you get it?
You could get these. You could get these from me. I purchase. I send them out directly. So they're $10. If I have to send it to you, it's probably like $14, $15. I believe they're on Amazon. You could get them off of Amazon, and or look up the ISBN, and you could get it off of there. Whatever. But yeah, DM me if you want a book, Motivating Our Youth. You could just cash out, and I'll send you this book to you. If you a teacher, anybody, just get the book and support and just spread it around. That's how I do with the 4 Agreements. That's like one of my most gifted books that I give out, the 4 Agreements. But yeah. Now
I want you to close with your bit. If you got it in your head, can you still remember?
Okay, yeah. So I'm about to close with from the hood of the ghettos. And so, of course, the ghetto is East St. Louis. It's I have about a couple of cuss words in there.
I'm okay with it.
Okay, it's not bad cuss words.
I'm not. This is not PG.
Oh, this is not PG. Okay, cool. All right, from the hood of the ghettos, I became a rose. It wasn't because of the clothes that I had on my back or what covered my toes. It wasn't because my daddy had stacks or because he had holes. You see, my mama had woes as she wake up to make up what my daddy left behind. In the same town, in the same time, there were nights without lights, roaches and mice screaming in fights, boxed macaroni and cheese, canned corn, and brown beans. I'm gonna stop right there. That's just a plug on processed food. That's a plug on the trauma that goes on in households and what kids go out. So, as I ran away to my grandma's house, only to find out life was still the same. Shit, no shame. It took hella years to know that I was more than my name. More than the blame, more than what came and went. Money spent, late bill sent. After the stint in the U.S. Navy, shit still didn't make sense. See, I walked down the aisle to receive many honors, praying and hoping that the bill collectors just wouldn't bother, thinking my degrees would stop the fees and reduce my needs. Nah, life don't work like that. So it wasn't until I discovered that it was my own shadow and doubt and fear that always seemed to loom near. Something that I can't name, but obviously something that I framed. And operating in that frame of mind, it cost a lot of dimes. I lost a lot of time. So now, catch this, because this is what everybody should be doing. Now, I mind my mind. I practice great thinking. I sit without blinking. I do prayers and vision boards and affirmations. I've damn near have turned my life into a declaration. The best feeling that I could use to describe this, the best word that I could use to describe this feeling is elation. See, I've elevated. I'm operating on a higher frequency. The bottom thinking people, they can't even see me. So yeah, from the hood of the ghettos, I became a rose. One that grew from the inside out and nobody really knows. When, where, or why. It just happened. I started blooming. I'm Gabby Valentino. Y'all check me out. You can follow me on Flow Presents on Instagram. You can follow Flow Presents is my production company. Flow for the love of women. I think women are the strongest creatures on earth, and we need to honor them in all areas. And it has nothing to do with sexuality. It's just that we birthed the people that are on this earth. And so we're like next to God in a sense. So we need to honor that. So that's what For the Love of Women. Then I started changing it to Flow, then Flow Presents because I started doing production. But initially it started off as For the Love of Women. And so I appreciate everybody. This is the book, Motivating Our Youth. I got a second one coming out in August. I forgot the name of it, but you can check me out, Gabby Valentino. You can follow me. If you can, you can share this video. And shout out to Lynette and I Am Every Woman podcast. Appreciate this opportunity. Thank everybody that tuned in. And, hopefully we could do this again.
Love you. I so much appreciate you coming in.
Download the app and listen at Radio Public, at iTunes, at Spotify, at IGTV to I'm Every Woman podcast, a weekly think tank hosted by Lynette Trares.